Hi everyone, welcome back to Charlie's Journey. If you're new here, I hope that you'll stay and you'll subscribe. And for my handful of subscribers that have already subscribed, thank you for your continued support. Shout out to one of my subscribers who sent me a really nice email the other day and basically said that I need to continue doing my videos. And also thank you for your support, and let's get straight into this video. I'm looking down because as always I've got notes. Right, one of the hardest things that I had to deal with in the early days of me leaving the Jehovah's Witness organisation is telling my family, telling my loved ones. Really difficult. Why it was difficult was because one, I was super close to my family. So having to tell them that things were about to change, really about to change, was difficult. And for anybody who's not an ex-Jehovah's Witness, again, if you're watching this for the first time, you don't know what I'm on about, go back and watch my previous videos and things will make a bit more sense. But if you are not familiar with Jehovah's Witnesses and you literally know nothing, you might be thinking, why would it be a big deal for you to tell them that you were no longer part of the religion? It's a big deal because when you are a dedicated, baptized Jehovah's Witness, anybody that's not, this won't apply to them. But if you make the decision to leave the Jehovah's Witness organisation because you no longer believe it, it's not for you anymore, or whatever, or if you have sinned and you are not sorry for whatever it is that you've done, Jehovah's Witnesses believe that you should be shunned. They don't call it shunning, but that's what it is. Everybody else in the congregation is to treat you as though you no longer exist. No communication, no time spent, nothing. All communication is withdrawn until you decide to either come back and be part of it again, or if you've sinned, you decide to change your ways, put whatever it is that you are doing to the side, and stop living that sinful way of life, whatever. But essentially, you are to be shunned, and that includes your family. That I think there's a little bit of an exception if you are under the age of 18 or under the age of 16. But if you're under the age of 18 or 16 and you're living at home with your parents, there's a little bit of an exception there, but still you would be encouraged to not have unnecessary contact and association with your child if they were either disfellowshipped, is what they call it, or if, as I said, they had just made a conscientious decision to not be part of it anymore. You would just be encouraged to not have unnecessary contact with them. You wouldn't hang out with them anymore. You wouldn't just be calling them to have a chat on the phone as you normally would. That all ends. So when I had to tell my family, I knew that that's what was going to be coming, most likely, because my mother and my sister were very devout. Very, very, very devout. Still are devout Jehovah's Witnesses. So I knew what their stance would be once I told them. I hoped it wouldn't be their stance, but I pretty much knew it would be. So without going into too much of the personal details, because they aren't in my life anymore like that, and I don't want to ever speak on anybody's behalf, it's not fair, blah, blah, blah. But obviously I'm sharing my experience, my truth, and as part of that, I do have to just mention that, yeah, I had to, tell them that I was no longer going to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses. It was very, very difficult. I chose not to tell them until maybe about a month after I had left myself. So I left in September 2019, and I didn't tell them until about mid to late October, just so that I could get my own head around it and I could just let it all sink in. But even still, when I did tell them, I probably didn't present the information as clearly and in the best way that I could have, because I was still not in a great place. And how do you how do you do something like that? How do you explain to your family who you love so much that, you know, you're walking away from something, the one thing that you've known your whole life? And like I said in my either my backstory video or my why I left video, when you're a Jehovah's Witness, it's all encompassing. It literally is your entire life. It's your way of life. It's everything. And that had been the case for me since I was 3 years old. So I was making a huge life change, and I knew that both my mum and my sister would be looking at me thinking, what on earth is wrong with her? And I think because I didn't convey things to them in the best way at the time, I think they maybe thought I was just going through something and I just needed some time. I needed maybe a bit of a rest and some time away, and that I would come back. And obviously that wasn't the case. But without, again, going into it, making it too personal, my sister made the decision immediately that she would be very much sticking to the principles that Jehovah's Witnesses believe and their interpretation of the Bible. So I got a goodbye kiss and a goodbye hug, and I haven't seen her in person since November 2019. And with my mum was a little bit different, because obviously she's my mother, and the hope that she held out that I would return was very deep. It was very great. She really held out a lot of hope that I would return, and so she still took a massive step back and wouldn't speak to me as often, but she would check in periodically to make sure I was okay and things like that. But yeah, I say all that to say, and as I said, without going into too much of the details, it was a very difficult thing for everybody. There was a lot of hurt, there was a lot of disappointment, there was a lot of emotion involved in that. It was a very, very difficult thing to have to deal with, especially already just dealing with my own emotions around that whole situation, to then have to explain that and then deal with the consequences, the result of it, which would be I wouldn't have access to my family who I love so much and have been close to my whole life. And along with that, I had to also let my children know the situation. Again, without going into that, because I don't want to talk about my children on here. That's not what the purpose of this channel is at all. But again, that was a very, very, very difficult thing, because being brought up as a child in the Jehovah's Witness religion, it's already a very difficult thing, because you don't celebrate birthdays, Christmas, any of those major holidays. So that then means that you end up getting bullied. I was severely bullied, like I explained in my other video. Severely bullied for being a Jehovah's Witness, but also it was a racial thing as well. Long story, another story for another day. Maybe I'll tell that one, but again, that's not the point. It's difficult being brought up as a child in the Jehovah's Witness organisation because of those things. You stick out like a sore thumb, and some of the religious teachings that Jehovah's Witnesses teach their children from very, very young can put a lot of fear into you. Like I said, from the time you're young, you believe that Jehovah God's going to come and destroy every bad person at any moment now, and that when you're constantly told that from a young age, it does put the fear of God in you. It really does. And you're constantly on edge, thinking it literally could be today, tomorrow. You know, any thunderstorm that happens, you're thinking, oh my God, is this the start of it? That kind of thing. And Jehovah's Witnesses expect parents to teach their children these beliefs from, as I said, as young as possible. So when I became a parent, I just did the same thing with my children. That's all I'm going to say. So having to then explain to my child that I was no longer a Jehovah's Witness, you can only imagine the fear that was in my child, thinking that I would be destroyed at Armageddon because I was now no longer a servant of Jehovah. So yeah, a lot to deal with. I dealt with a lot of pain, guilt, and regret over everything at the time. Obviously now, almost 4 years down the line, I can see it for what it was. I literally was just parenting my children the way that I had been parented and the way that I thought was best at the time. I thought I was doing what was right at the time because those were my beliefs as well. Those were my beliefs at one point, and I sincerely thought that I was helping my child at the time. But yeah, it took a lot of reassurance, a lot of reassurance on my part, a lot of talking and helping my child to dispel the beliefs that I had placed upon him. And he's fine now. Just saying that, he's absolutely fine now, and he hasn't got that fear at all anymore. But yeah, in those early days, dealing with that, my own emotions, and on top of it not being able to have access to my family, who I would normally go to for advice. How do I deal with that? Go to my mother for advice. I'm going through this at the moment. I feel overwhelmed with that. What can I do? What should I do? And not having that was very difficult. Very, very, very difficult. I felt extremely alone. And so I went seeking as many online groups as I could. I went seeking Jehovah's Witness groups, particularly parents who might be able to give me some advice on how they navigated the situation when they were in the same position as me, and I found that quite helpful. But for the most part, it was something I had to figure out on my own. I had to figure it out on my own, and that was difficult. Putting it very mildly, that was difficult. And again, I can see how much I've grown, because I could never have spoken about this a couple of years ago without sobbing my heart out, because it was a lot. Don't let the smile fool you. Don't let the smile fool you. It was a lot. So that was the first situation I had to deal with after leaving the organisation. Bam, straight into it. And yeah, it was not easy. But I just want to say, if anybody is experiencing anything similar, it does get better. I won't sit here and lie to anybody and say that it's not going to be hard, especially if you are the only one that's left, as in you're a parent and maybe your child's mother or father, depending who's watching, the child's mother or father is still a Jehovah's Witness. That is a very difficult situation to have to navigate. Having to tell your family that you are leaving it behind, whether you have been part of it for a few years or whether you have been born into it practically like I was, it is very difficult, especially if they are devout. Really do take it seriously, really, really, truly believe in it. And if you are friends with or related to anybody that is in that group, then yes, having to tell them will be extremely difficult. It will be extremely painful, and you do have to be prepared to deal with that. Don't let it obviously stop you if you do feel like you want to make that decision to pull away from the religion for whatever reason. Don't let it stop you by any means, but as I said, it is hard. I don't want to lie to anybody. I will talk in later videos about practical ways to deal with these type of things and what I found helpful in my, my experience, obviously. But I'll do that in future videos. I'm just at the moment letting you guys know again a bit about my journey, so that it just makes it, you guys can understand where I'm coming from and the depths of what I had to deal with and how, as I said, I managed to turn it around. But yeah, difficult. Anyway, that's it for today. Please comment, like and subscribe to the video. As I said, I release videos every Wednesday and Sunday, and until the next time, I will see you on my next video.